Hi, welcome to the Dynamic Duel podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Johnny DC.
And I'm his twin brother, Marvelous Joe.
And in this episode, we're doing another duel. This time we're pitting the Young Justice character Arrowette against the New Mutant, Mirage.
Yeah, if you watch the New Mutants film, you likely know who Mirage is. She's Dani Moonstar. She's a Native American member who shoots out these psi arrows. She's badass because she can manifest your greatest fears. It's going to be an interesting battle pitting that against the very Green Arrow-esque Arrowette. Of course, this is all in lead up to our upcoming team duel in which we're going to find out who would win in a fight between Young Justice and Young Avengers. That's just coming up in a few weeks, so look forward to that at the beginning of October. Before the main event, we're going to break down the comic book movie news from the past week, including that the DC Fandome is not returning in 2022, Brendan Gleeson has joined the cast of Joker Folie, Deux, and Ben Kingsley's character, Trevor Slattery, is returning for Wonder Man's Disney Plus series. Yeah, as always, we list our segment times in our episode description, so feel free to check out the show notes if you want to skip ahead to a particular topic. Real quick, guys, don't forget to join us on Patreon, where we offer ad-free episodes of the show, bonus content including top 10 episodes and bloopers, monthly live movie watch-alongs, and access to our Discord chat server. Check it out right after this episode at patreon.com/dynamicduel, which is linked in our show notes. Our lowest tier is only $2 a month.
And for $10, you can become an executive producer of this show and help us determine our episode content.
Yeah, if you love the show and you want to listen to more of it and you want to interact with Jonathan and myself, become a patron. It's the best way to do all of those things. But with that out of the way,
quick to the No Prize.
A No Prize is an award Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award we post on Instagram for the person that we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. Last week's question was, if Dan Lin is not chosen, who would you want to be the head of DC Studios, and why? Of course, this was coming off the news that Dan Lin is the front runner for that position. Yeah, we got a lot of answers, which was surprising to me because I thought it was a fairly esoteric question. But let's break down our honorable mentions as well as the No Prize winner. Our first honorable mention goes to Rick McGrew, who said,
"Hey guys, Rick from the Retronomapod. If I had to choose somebody to take over the DC side of Warner Brothers, I'd choose Kevin Smith. He's a huge fan. He's talked about him in his films and on his podcasts. That he could easily head it. I mean, give him a shot. What is there to lose at this point?" What's up, dude?
What's happening?
How are you?
Good, you? Okay.
"What up, bros?
Hey, what's up? Big gulps, huh? All right. See you later." I think he left the record button on a little bit too long.
Yeah.
That's okay.
No, that was great. Kevin Smith, yeah, fantastic producer. He's produced a lot of great films over the years.
Directed a lot of great films. A lot of cult favorites.
Yeah, some not so great films as well, but we know that he is an adamant DC fan.
Comic book fan in general.
Right.
He's written some great comics for both Marvel and DC, including Daredevil and Green Arrow.
And Spider-Man. Yeah, absolutely. He really understands these characters. And while every filmmaker has their hits and misses, I think that as far as providing a vision, at least to DC for the direction that they should go, you could not do much better, I think, than Kevin Smith. He'd be like in the top 10 people in contention.
I mean, my number one wish for whoever takes the role of the head of DC Films would be that they were a fan of DC Comics. And this guy has a podcast of his own dedicated to Batman.
Right. Fat Man on Batman. Or I think they changed the name. It's Fat Man Beyond now.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Right. Because he's not just talking about Batman anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, he has said some pretty controversial things on there. I think especially of late regarding Batgirl. So, I mean, he'll probably have to rein that in if he's the head of DC Studios, if he's a Warner Brothers executive. But yeah, I agree. You could do worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Much worse. Thanks to Rick for the answer. Hope you had a great time hanging with your bros. Our next honorable mention goes to Landon Parker, who said,
"For some odd reason, I would like to see Zack Snyder be head because the Suicide Squad and Zack Snyder's Justice League was great, as long as his other projects. They were like chef's kiss. And if that doesn't happen, well, I really don't know who else. I would just say stick with the person they have now."
Yeah, so this is a controversial take, but I think it's no surprise to anyone who listens to this podcast. I love Zack Snyder's DC films. I think they are the best DC films that have ever been made, like Man of Steel, like Watchmen. But him and his wife have also served as producers on other DC films, including Wonder Woman, including both Suicide Squad movies, including Aquaman. Now they're executive producers, so they didn't have too much involvement in the film, except for Wonder Woman. Zach actually helped write the story for that film. But I know a lot of people would hate it, but I would not if Zack Snyder, or really his wife Deborah, were to be the head of DC Films. It's never going to happen, ever, because Zack Snyder, I think, is definitely done with Warner Brothers. And
vice versa.
Exactly, yeah.
But he at least had a vision for DC that would have culminated in some amazing epic films that he never got the chance to do.
Yeah, love or hate that vision, it was, in fact, a vision. And I think I would have loved what it would have turned into.
I think there would have been room for improvement in notes and feedback and stuff to kind of shape it going forward into something that was more palatable, that more general audiences would have enjoyed.
Right.
So great answer. Our next honorable mention goes to Miggy Matanguihan, who said,
"Hey, what's up, guys? This is Miggy. And I don't know too many other directors or producers or anybody who could be the head of DC. So from the three options that you guys had mentioned, I would go with Greg Berlanti because, like you had mentioned, he kind of shaped the Arrowverse, and I wouldn't hold the quality of that against him because it is a TV budget."
Yeah, so 2 episodes back, I think it was 2 episodes, we mentioned that the 3 contenders for the role of head of DC Films were Greg Berlanti, Walter Hamada, and Dan Lin. Of those choices, Greg Berlanti was probably my least favorite, though I could understand why someone would argue for him to be the head, considering he has the most experience bringing all of these DC characters together on the screen.
Right, and imagine giving him a larger budget beyond the CW television budget. I think he could do great. And again, yeah, he certainly has a vision. The issue that we had at the time was that he was, in fact, one of the scriptwriters for the Green Lantern movie, which was not a great film, but we don't know how much of that script was rewritten by Jeff Johns.
I think a considerable amount was, though I'm not convinced that Berlanti's original script was going to be so much better than what we ended up getting. But if he's the producer, he's not necessarily the writer. He's hiring other writers. All he needs is the vision and the leadership to spearhead the studio.
So great answer to Miggy Matanguihan. We want to give a huge thank you and shout out to Scotty Macho, Avery Speas, and Noah Terry for taking the time to visit our website and leaving us an answer.
But the winner of this week's No Prize is Brandon Estergard, who said,
"If Dan Lin isn't chosen, I think it's best to go with Jay Oliva or Jay Oliva, however you pronounce his name. He was the producer on the DCAU movies, and it's been said multiple times that had they just made those movies live action, we'd be on pretty much even ground or even footing as Marvel movies at the moment."
Now, honestly, when I heard that the head of Warner Brothers Discovery was looking for someone to lead DC Studios, the guy who spearheaded the DCAU was my number one pick, who apparently is James Tucker, not Jay Oliva.
Yeah, Jay directed quite a few of those films, but it was actually James Tucker that produced a majority of the DCAMU, not the AU. There's a difference.
Oh, right. The DC animated movie universe.
Right. But we get what Brandon Estergard was going for. This guy who produced the series of DC animated films between Justice League, The Flashpoint Paradox, and Justice League Dark Apocalypse War.
Yeah, that whole saga was incredible. Again, we rated Justice League Dark Apocalypse War 5 stars. We considered it DC's version of Endgame.
Right.
And I always say, if you don't like what DC is doing with their live action films, check out their animated universe if you haven't.
It's on par with the MCU, at least the DCAMU was. And when we put out this question to our listeners, I was hoping to get an answer like this, something that I didn't personally consider, but was absolutely perfect. I think this was that answer. James Mother Tucker.
All of this said, though, if Dan Lin was chosen tomorrow, I would still be really happy.
I'd be happy with any of these answers, honestly. But big congratulations to Brandon Estergard for winning this week's No Prize. If you, the listener, want a shot at winning your own No Prize, stay tuned to later on this episode when we'll be asking another question of the week. And now that that's done,
on to the news. Okay, so 2 years ago, because of the COVID pandemic, DC started an annual event called the DC Fandome, which is not returning this year. A lot of news sites are saying that it's been canceled this year, and those sites are liars because it was never actually announced for 2022.
Well, I think like last year, weren't people saying that they were going to do it again this year or something like that?
No, literally no one said that.
Okay, calm down.
The real headline is that the Fandome is not returning for this year and may not return ever. So I guess you could say that Warner Brothers canceled the event outright, not just for this year, but that's not what a lot of news outlets are saying. This should really come as a surprise to no one, because if it was going to happen this year, they would have announced it during the summer at the very latest.
Right.
Just like previous years. I am sad that it's not returning.
The irony, though, is that in less than a week, Marvel is going to be having their own news conference in the D23 Expo, where we're going to get a shit ton of news for Marvel projects, and DC is just going to be left out to dry. DC barely even made an appearance at the San Diego Comic-Con, which Marvel also dominated.
Yeah, really only DC showcased Black Adam, Shazam Fury of the Gods, League of Super Pets, all the Rock projects, by the way, but also Netflix's The Sandman series. It's not a bad turnout, but DC as a brand didn't have much of a presence, I agree.
I'm just laughing my ass off because of all those times in the past 2 years we were like, where's Marvel's event? Well, here it is. I told you back then that one day Marvel's going to be back on top once COVID started receding, and that moment is now. I'm going to get all the news. It's going to be amazing as a Marvel fan to learn about all these projects coming up and all these casting announcements and things like that. And you're just going to be sitting, playing in the dirt.
Well, of course, Marvel's there for you during the good times. But guess what? A true friend is there for you during the bad times as well.
I mean, Marvel had announcements then, too.
Barely.
About the equivalent of what DC had this year.
That's fair. But I mean, there's still New York Comic Con. DC has said that because they're not doing the Fandome, they will be returning to Comic Con events. The second biggest of which in the US is New York Comic Con, which is happening in early October. So DC, you better show up. They won't. They better. They better have Dan Lin up on the stage if he's already hired, revealing that he has a 10-year plan. Like, I really want them to go all out with this. They won't. What are you trying to do here? What are you trying to crush my dreams?
Yes.
Well, it's working. In other DC news, Todd Phillips' Joker sequel, Joker Folie Deux, has added Brendan Gleeson to its cast. Of course, Joaquin Phoenix is returning to the role of Arthur Fleck, the Joker, and it was recently announced that Lady Gaga will be playing Dr. Harleen Quinzel. As far as who Brendan Gleeson is playing, we don't know yet. But in a dream scenario, I'm kind of hoping he plays the Penguin. I'm kind of hoping they introduce more DC villains into this film.
Without the Batman?
Well, Bruce Wayne could be a part of it, but build up the villains' rise to power, make there a need for Batman, essentially.
I'm guessing that Brendan Gleeson is going to be the antagonist of this movie. I don't know if Brendan Gleeson can sing, though, considering this is going to be a musical. It'll be interesting to have someone like Brendan Gleeson, who I typically associate with Scottish Highlanders and mob bosses and things like that,
Honestly, I think most actors can carry a tune. And if they can't, there's always auto-tune.
I would love that, actually.
Brendan Gleeson is a great actor. I'm excited to see who he's playing, if it's going to be a known DC character name or if it's someone original. I guess we'll find out eventually, maybe when the first trailer comes out or before that. Either way, I'm excited for this movie and can't wait to get more information about it. The film, of course, is slated for October 4th, 2024.
In Marvel news, we learned this past week that Sir Ben Kingsley, is going to reprise his role of Trevor Slattery in the upcoming Disney Plus series Wonder Man, which is being produced by Destin Daniel Cretton, who, of course, brought the actor back for the movie Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Since Wonder Man's alter ego, Simon Williams, is an actor within the Marvel Comics universe, it is largely theorized that this Disney Plus show is kind of going to be a send-up of Hollywood culture. And if that's the case, I could totally see why they would bring back someone like Trevor Slattery, who is largely a big joke within the MCU, but also an actor himself. That's his whole thing, is that he's this actor who pretended to be the Mandarin, who eventually was captured by the Mandarin to entertain the Ten Rings organization. I hated the Mandarin reveal. If you listen to our Iron Man 3 review, you know how much I absolutely despised that Ben Kingsley was not actually the Mandarin. But if you listen to our Shang-Chi review, you know that they kind of made up for it, and I thought that his appearance in that movie was funny.
Yeah, his appearance in that movie made sense considering they were introducing the real Mandarin.
Right. it all kind of worked out, almost a decade later. But this Wonder Man series is one of the upcoming Disney Plus shows that I'm most looking forward to because I've always been a pretty big Wonder Man fan. And I really think it'll be interesting to see not only how they play this Hollywood culture spoof, but also to see the character in action. He's almost like Marvel's version of DC's Superman, but his powers look like a fizzy grape soda. If you remember that analogy that I made in our Captain Atom versus Wonder Man Duel episode.
I do kind of wish that for the series they go with a different name than Wonder Man.
Why?
I want them to go with like Heroes of Hollywood or something different. Because Wonder Woman, like, people are going to get super confused.
People are going to forget who Wonder Woman is when Wonder Man comes out.
You shut your mouth. I don't want to ever hear that from your mouth again.
They're going to be like, this Wonder Woman chick is a ripoff of Wonder Man. What's happening here?
Everyone knows Wonder Woman. Marvel's not going to fool anybody.
We'll see. But, Simon Williams' Wonder Man is a prominent Avenger within the comic books. I wonder if they're going to have the character move from the small screen to the big screen in the Avengers Kang Dynasty or Secret Wars films. There's huge potential for the actor playing Wonder Man to show up in multiple projects. And I'm excited for this.
Yeah, but we don't know who's playing him yet.
Right, exactly. But that brings us to our question of the week. Who would you cast as Wonder Man for the upcoming Disney Plus series?
Record your answer at dynamicduel.com by clicking on the red microphone button in the bottom right-hand corner, which will prompt you to leave us a voicemail. Your message could be up to 30 seconds long, and don't forget to leave your name in case we include you on the podcast. We'll pick our favorite answer and award that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to Instagram. Be sure to answer before September 10th. But I think that wraps up the news section of this episode. Now let's move on to the main event, where we find out who would win in a duel between the Young Justice member, Arrowette, and the New Mutant, Mirage. Okay, so Arrowette versus Mirage. Of course, we needed to do a duel episode with Arrowette in lead up to episode 300, which will be a team duel between Young Justice and the Young Avengers. When deciding who to pit against Arrowette, we were kind of hesitant to go with an archer because we didn't want to have another repeat case of Green Arrow versus Hawkeye, where they're essentially the same character with the same abilities, and the results would be 50-50. We like to be surprised by our duel results.
Yeah, Green Arrow versus Hawkeye was same character, different flavors. One was grape, one was lime.
Green apple. Green apple.
Okay, there you go. But with this, we were discussing with our executive producers, specifically AJ Dunkerly, and came up with the answer of Mirage, who is an archer, but in a different sense in that she's primarily a psychic. Now, you guys are probably familiar with Mirage if you've read the X-Men comics or the New Mutants comics or X-Force, or have seen the New Mutants movie, which, wasn't bad.
I liked it. I really liked it.
It was a solid film and definitely unique within the genre of superheroes. And I really liked the performance that Blue Hunt gave as Danny Moonstar, Mirage.
Yeah, so Mirage is probably more well-known than Arrowette, who's admittedly a deep dive. Like, she's a pretty obscure character, unless you've seen the Young Justice cartoon or read the comics.
Are you upset that we're actually getting to Arrowette before Arsenal, Roy Harper?
No, because, we'll get to him eventually. I don't want all of my DC characters going forward to be like the most obscure characters you've ever heard of, And again, we had to do this one in lead up to episode 300.
Right.
If you've never listened to one of our duel episodes before, the way we determine a winner between these two characters is by running 1,000 Monte Carlo simulations using their statistics. A Monte Carlo simulation is a probabilistic model used to determine outcomes through random sampling.
And in our case, it randomizes statistics along a normal distribution, which is a bell curve, as a way to simulate the many variables that can occur during battle. The stat parameters we use are based on the official Marvel Power Grid, and we use that criteria to extrapolate the DC character stats. We've included some additional stat categories of our own, such as range, damage potential, versatility, and perception, in order to create a more complete and robust simulation.
Running these 1000 simulations gives us a percentage of wins for each character, and we declare the one with the higher percentage to be the ultimate victor, considering that they're more likely to win any given battle. No character ever wins 100% of the time. Comics have shown that there's usually a way for Batman to defeat Superman, and we feel our method falls in line with the precedents that have been established in the comic book stories.
And we use this method because it was the least subjective, most unbiased way to determine who would win. Because, of course, we are both heavily biased toward our respective allegiances, so instead of debating these matches forever, we just let the math decide for us. There are no fan votes here, and no relying on just feats.
Before we run the simulations, however, we like to break down each character's histories and abilities before improvising a scenario on how we imagine one of the 1000 simulations we run would play out beat for beat. And I believe it's my turn to go first with the DC character, so let me tell you all about Arrowette. The original Arrowette, who went by the name Miss Arrowette, was a young woman named Bonnie King, whose very controlling mother, Millie, pushed her to excel in archery from a young age. As a teenager, Bonnie competed in the Olympics and won a bronze medal in archery, which infuriated her mother, who expected her to win gold. Millie's reaction caused Bonnie to run away to Star City, where she became inspired by the resident superhero, Green Arrow, and his sidekick, Speedy. You can learn more about Green Arrow in our Green Arrow vs. Hawkeye Duel episode. Bonnie made a costume and some trick arrows for herself and took on the superhero moniker of Miss Arrowette, attempting to help Green Arrow and Speedy in their adventures in the same way that Batgirl helped Batman and Robin, though the heroes rejected her due to her vanity regarding her refusal to wear a mask and her general clumsiness. Bonnie and Green Arrow dated for a short time as civilians, though Bonnie was later approached by a young journalist named Burnell Jones, who happened to be Bonnie's biggest fan from her days as an Olympian. In exchange for writing stories regularly about her superhero career, Bonnie let Burnell be her sidekick, named Bowstring, due to his thin physical nature. It wasn't long, however.
That's a horrible description.
It's the golden age. What are you going to do? He was thin everywhere. It wasn't long, however, before Green Arrow intervened and asked her to stop interfering in other heroes' work and suggested she retire from superheroics. Bonnie took up a civilian life as a secretary and developed carpal tunnel in her wrists, forcing her to give up archery altogether. Eventually, she and Burnell became married and they had a daughter, who they named Suzanne King Jones, nicknamed Sissy. Burnell died 5 years later from fish poisoning, leaving Bonnie and Sissy as the beneficiaries of a considerable life insurance policy.
Wait, so the dude was named Bowstring, and he ended up dying from fish poisoning?
Yeah, he ate bad shellfish.
This is the most unfortunate character in all of comic book history.
Definitely one of them. Absolutely. Bonnie used the money to turn her daughter into the superhero she could never be, putting her through rigorous, non-stop lessons in martial arts, gymnastics, ballet, and of course, archery. Despite Sissy having a strained relationship with her mother that mirrored Bonnie's relationship with her own mother, Sissy eventually adopted the superhero identity of Arrowette, along with a costume similar to her mother's original Miss Arrowette outfit. In her first mission, Sissy took down the villain Speas, alongside the young hero Impulse, who you can learn more about in our Impulse vs. Speed episode. Impulse's mentor at the time, Max Mercury, became immediately concerned that Bonnie had exploited and forced her daughter to become a superhero, and got child welfare services involved. Bonnie eventually lost custody of her daughter, and Sissy was sent to a girls' boarding school, where she continued to train in archery at her leisure. Deciding to become a superhero regardless of what her mother wanted, Sissy joined Young Justice, becoming best friends with Cassie Sandsmark, who you can learn more about in our Wonder Girl vs. Marvel Boy episode. After several adventures with the team, Sissy's school psychiatrist, the only adult Sissy ever trusted, was murdered. Sissy tracked down the killers and nearly killed one of them herself before being stopped by Superboy. Shaken by the ordeal, Sissy quit Young Justice and retired from being a superhero, though she remained a good friend to her former teammates. Eventually, Sissy reconciled with her mother Bonnie, who encouraged her to enter the Olympics. Sissy did, and won a gold medal, becoming something of a celebrity. Having no desire to return to the life of a superhero, Sissy still found ways to help behind the scenes during major, world-shattering events as a medical aid volunteer. Wonder Girl eventually joined Sissy at her boarding school, and Sissy donned her Arrowette costume only once more to help Wonder Girl rescue her mother. Pre-Flashpoint, that is. Post-Flashpoint, Sissy came out of retirement once more at the behest of Impulse to help save Superboy from Star Labs with other young heroes, including the Wonder Twins, Ginny Hex, Teen Lantern, Naomi, Amethyst, and many more. Abilities-wise, Sissy ranks as one of the best archers in the world, wielding an array of trick arrows such as boxing glove arrows, freeze arrows, net arrows, oil slick arrows, and more. Even a few sillier ones from her mother, such as perfume arrows, powder puff arrows, hairpin arrows, nail file arrows, and needle and thread arrows.
Oh my god, her mom sucked.
They worked! It's the golden age!
What does the perfume arrow do besides make your opponent smell good?
It actually helped Green Arrow and Speedy track a bad guy.
Oh, okay.
She is also a world-class gymnast and an expert in judo, jeet kune do, and kickboxing. And that's Arrowette.
She doesn't seem to have too large of a backstory, considering that she largely retired from her superhero role while it was still early.
Yeah, I think she joined Young Justice in like issue number 7, and by issue 15, I think it was, she had already decided to retire. So not much of a superhero career to speak of.
Seems like it lasted longer in the Young Justice television show than it did in the comics.
Sort of. I mean, her character was basically Artemis in Young Justice. So still a young female archer, different name. They essentially changed Arrowette's and Sissy King's name to Artemis in the show, though in the comics, Artemis is actually a hero/villain known as Tigress.
So confusing.
A little bit, yeah.
No, not a little bit, a lot of it, like most DC stuff.
Oh, jeez.
But not Marvel stuff. Let me go ahead and break down the history and powers of Mirage.
This better not be confusing at all.
Danielle Moonstar was born to William and Peg in Boulder, Colorado. Like most mutants, her powers manifested around puberty during a period of heightened emotional stress. Danny's mutant ability, however, was debilitating to her social environment as she cast illusions of the fears of those around her. Unable to control this power, she became an outcast in her community, rejected by everyone but her parents and her grandfather, a Cheyenne Nation chief named Black Eagle. One night, during a nightmare, Danny projected images of her own fear, which was her parents' murder at the hands of a demonic bear creature. She woke up to find her parents missing. Believing herself responsible, she fled into the Rocky Mountains where her grandfather Black Eagle looked after her. He reached out to Professor Charles Xavier, who formerly served alongside Danny's father in the army, who agreed to take her in and train her. Other forces had learned of Danny's abilities, however, including the Inner Circle of the Hellfire Club, a group of social elites who sought to increase their influence over the world and eliminate other mutants they deemed a threat to their plans. They arrived and killed Black Eagle and tried to hunt down Danny, who had fled. She was rescued by Professor Xavier and his burgeoning team of new mutant superheroes called the New Mutants. Danny joined them back in Westchester at Xavier's School for the Gifted, where she learned how to control her illusion casting abilities. She grew close to her teammates Magic, Sunspot, Karma, Cannonball, and especially Wolfsbane, with whom only Danny could communicate when she was in her wolf form. Together with the New Mutants, Danny fought their school rivals, the Hellions, and the Brood aliens. It wasn't long, however, before the demon bear that took Danny's parents came back to claim Danny's soul. Although she had been preparing for this eventual encounter, the bear nearly killed Danny, and her teammates had to take her to the hospital to recover. While there, the New Mutants battled the demon bear, and Magic used the power of her soul sword to defeat it.
Wait, so the demon bear was real?
Yeah, it was an actual mystic entity.
Huh.
Unlike the movie where it was a manifestation of Danny's fear.
Okay.
You can learn more about Magic in our Dead Man vs. Magic Duel episode. When the villain Enchantress captured the New Mutants and brought them to Asgard, Danny rescued a white horse that she found, which happened to be a winged horse belonging to the Valkyrior, Asgard's escorts to the realm of Valhalla. The horse, whom Danny named Brightwind, chose her as its rider and endowed her with the ability to perceive the coming of death, just like Valkyrie, whom you can learn more about in our Power Girl vs. Valkyrie episode. After helping defeat a plot by Hela, the Asgardian goddess of death, Danny chose to stay in Asgard for a time as her teammates returned to Earth and reformed the New Mutants as the Team X-Force led by time-traveling mutant Cable. When Danny came back, she joined the international organization S.H.I.E.L.D. as an undercover operative to infiltrate the villainous mutant group known as the Mutant Liberation Front, who ended up killing her horse. When the group was defeated, she left her undercover role and joined the X-Men as a reserve member. By this time, her powers had developed to the point where she could not only project fear illusions, but any image from her target's mind, and she could manifest and fire psychic arrows to incapacitate opponents. She lost all of these abilities, however, after the events of M-Day, when the Scarlet Witch depowered most of the world's mutants in a fit of madness. You can learn more about this in our Zatanna vs. Scarlet Witch Duel episode. In absence of her powers, Danny was recruited by the US government after the events of the superhuman Civil War to train new young heroes in the development of their powers, and she was later brought to the new X-Men headquarters in San Francisco to do the same. She ended up making a deal with the death goddess Hela to get Valkyrie powers and her horse back in exchange for a favor. After serving with a reformed New Mutants team alongside her old teammates, Hela's request came in for Danny to bring to Hell the spirits that fell in Asgard's battle with Norman Osborn, known as the Siege event, which you can learn more about in our Joker vs. Green Goblin episode. Afterward, Danny joined Valkyrie's team called the Fearless Defenders, but later was infected alongside her old New Mutants teammates with a techno-organic transmode virus. Danny and her friends were programmed to serve as sentinels to hunt down and kill other mutants. But they were eventually saved by the X-Men and cured of their infection, which actually removed Danny's Valkyrie powers and restored her former psychic abilities. Despite this, she fought alongside Valkyrie and the rest of the Valkyrier during the War of the Realms event, where Thor defeated the Dark Elf Malekith and reclaimed his hammer Mjolnir. Since then, Danny has joined her fellow mutants on their new sentient island home of Krakoa. And that's her history. Powers-wise, Mirage has an array of psychic abilities, with empathic illusion casting being her foremost power. With it, she can project mental images taken from the minds of others within her line of sight, or her own mind. Mirage is not technically a true telepath or mind reader. The images she creates are not consciously perceived by her prior to their manifestation, but are subconsciously pulled out and put on display.
Are they random, or does she get to choose like what is shown?
She basically chooses a theme or subject, and then it presents. So if she wants to show their greatest fear, it manifests. If she wants to choose her target's greatest desire, that manifests. Mirage can focus this empathic psychic power into neural energy arrows that she can fire and cause opponents to experience psychic pain and fearful memories. She was trained from a young child in the use of a bow and arrow, spear, knife, and later a sword, and is an adept markswoman. She can empathically perceive the emotions of people as well as animals around her, allowing them to communicate with her, including Wolfsbane and her flying horse. And though Danny is a trained equestrian, she will not be having her horse Brightwind in this match.
Good.
And finally, Mirage graduated college with a degree in psychology to help others overcome their trauma and fears, and is an experienced school instructor.
Okay, so the New Mutants, they're not teens anymore.
No, they're, young adults. Young to mid-20s, probably.
Okay, I just had to say that whole thing was super confusing.
No, it wasn't. It was like clear as day.
It's like, is she Valkyrie? Is she Mirage? Is she Moonstar? I don't know.
Although she doesn't have Valkyrie powers, she's still highly respected by the Valkyrier.
Okay. Well, now that we've got their histories and abilities out of the way, let's speculate on how one of the 1,000 simulated matches will go. The winner is determined by simulations, not this speculation, but it's fun to imagine how this fight could play out. We don't set any rules for this match other than the characters don't know anything about each other going in, except that the other character is a threat that needs to be put down. And we say they start off about 50 meters apart in an environment that has no bearing on the match itself, because we don't take stats for the environment. Plus, certain characters have advantages in some environments over others, and we want these characters to win on their own merit. So let's get into it. Arrowette and Mirage meet on the battlefield. Who goes first? I'll say that Arrowette starts...
No, Mirage goes first, actually, by getting an empathic reading on Arrowette, like sensing her harmful intent.
Okay, as Mirage is busy doing that, though, she's just going to get an arrow through the skull.
No, because Mirage could sense it coming, so she's going to flip into the air, dodging the arrow that Arrowette shot, and as Mirage lands, all of a sudden, Arrowette sees right in front of her a psychic illusion of her greatest fear, which is her mom? What?
Bonnie?
Yeah. And Bonnie is like nagging Arrowette. She's like, how come you never call your mother? I made a lasagna. You need to eat more. You're so skinny.
How come I don't have any grandchildren? Arrowette, she's probably like, what the fuck? She shoots a smoke arrow into the ground to hide from her mom and get away.
Well, I mean, like, Mirage needs a line of sight to her target, right? So shooting the smoke arrow probably dissipates the illusion of Bonnie.
Nice.
So
I'm smart.
Mirage sees that Arrowette's hidden in this cloud, and she's going to fire, like, a bunch of arrows into the smoke that tag Arrowette and give away her location.
Firing into the smoke, she's going to miss. All those shots are going to miss. Arrowette's just that good.
All right, so then Mirage is just going to run into the smoke cloud and then find her.
No, all she finds is Arrowette's bow upside her head, knocking Mirage to the ground and her bow out of her hand. So now Arrowette has Mirage pinned on the ground with her bowstring around her throat, just choking Mirage out.
Damn. Except that while Mirage is underneath Arrowette, she's going to manifest this empathic knife made from psychic energy. She's going to stab that right into Arrowette's gut, which is going to make Arrowette relive her most traumatic memory.
But Mirage is like Psylocke?
No, Psylocke is more like a true telepath. Like, Psylocke's psychic knife would let her, like, read her opponent's mind and stuff, whereas Mirage's psychic powers are just strictly empathic. So basically, the knife makes Arrowette relive her most traumatic memory, and Arrowette is stunned by this. She's probably remembering, like, her murdered psychiatrist or something. Right. And she's like, oh god. And Mirage uses that opportunity to backwards somersault kick Arrowette off of her, knocking Arrowette face first into the ground.
Okay, but that's going to knock Arrowette out of her traumatic memory, okay? So from the ground, Arrowette is just going to, like, in one movement, just roll out of her fall, knock an arrow, and fire a net arrow at Mirage, which is going to trap her. And she's going to follow up with, like, a couple more regular arrows that's going to tag Mirage in her shoulder and thigh.
Damn! Okay, well, Mirage can't cut her way out of the net, so she's trapped, she's injured, she has 2 arrows in her. But before Arrowette can finish her off, all of a sudden this big-ass demon bear appears on the battlefield, which is conjured from Mirage's own fears. So this demon bear is going to manifest on the field, and it's just going to roar in Arrowette's face, causing her to, like, fall back and shit her skirt in fright. And this is going to give Mirage enough time to break off the arrows that have been shot into her, and she's going to escape from underneath her net.
Okay, so Arrowette, she's probably pretty panicked. I'm going to say she's going to grab an explosive arrow to take out this huge-ass bear. She's going to shoot it at him, but it's just going to go right through him, right?
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to say that the explosive arrow goes through the demon bear and happens to land right in Mirage's vicinity.
What?
Before going off, and it's just going to send her flying backward with this explosive force. And that's going to break Mirage's concentration to eliminate the demon bear illusion.
Okay. So, Mirage has 2 arrows in her and was rocked by this nearby explosive arrow. So, yeah, she's laying there on the ground hurt for sure, trying to recoup.
Right, okay. So Arrowette sees Mirage on the ground, and she's going to quickly fire off, like, a huge volley of trick arrows, like freeze arrow, boxing glove arrow, buzzsaw, perfume arrow.
Okay.
Even. like 10 arrows, and they all hit their target, like dead on. So by the end of this, Mirage, she's just a smear on the ground, like a pretty smelling smear.
Except psych.
Oh gosh.
Mirage was just projecting the image of Arrowette's greatest desire in the moment, which was to see her opponent defeated. In reality, Mirage limped her way around behind Arrowette, and she just runs a psychic energy neural spear through Arrowette's back, which overloads Arrowette with so much shock and fear that she ends up dying from the fright.
Dude, she was rocked by an explosion. How did she manage to pull off another illusion in time? I'm calling BS.
Because you only thought she was rocked by the explosion. Arrowette wasn't even aiming for Mirage at the time. She was aiming for the demon bear. So there's no way that the explosive arrow even landed close to Mirage.
But I said it did.
Yeah, you thought it did. That's what Arrowette saw in her mind for sure. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yep.
Agree to disagree.
Yeah, we could leave the match there. Either Mirage was hit by the explosive arrow and then finished off with a bunch of trick arrows, or Arrowette missed with the explosive arrow, which is much more likely, And Mirage used that opportunity to confuse Arrowette and then stab her in the back with a neural spear and kill her.
Arrowette doesn't miss.
When she's not aiming at something, yeah, she does. We'll go ahead and input the stats on these characters, run the simulations, and come back with a winner.
All right, so Arrowette versus Mirage. Mirage didn't use her bow as much as I thought she would in the speculation.
Well, no, she got it knocked out of her hand right away in the smoke cloud.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, I mean, whether Mirage has her bow or doesn't, stat-wise, they pair up almost evenly.
Yeah, in terms of speed and durability, strength, they came out similarly. We said that they were both pretty evasive, not just through their acrobatic feats, but also through their ability to kind of cloud their location, either through like smoke screen or illusions.
Or powder puff arrow.
Yeah, that too. That's so stupid. Oh my God.
We said they were similar when it came to fighting as well.
Yeah, they're both highly trained.
And of course, they both have a long range.
Where we said the characters differed were in terms of damage level. We just said Arrowette can cause more physical damage than Mirage, given the arsenal that she has. We said that Mirage was better educated than Arrowette and therefore smarter. And we said that Mirage also had a greater perception due to the fact that she's empathic and can manifest visions from her opponent's minds.
Right. The biggest variation when it came to the stats, though, came in terms of versatility, thanks to Arrowette's trick arrows.
Yeah, Mirage is also versatile, but not really. Like, she can manifest illusions of a range of things, but they're not actually real. So she didn't get quite as high in the versatility stat.
Right. So taking all of these stats into consideration, who do you think came out on top?
Mirage, I think, she's psychic and Arrowette's not. So I'm giving Mirage the edge. And our Instagram followers surprisingly mark this as a 50-50 match, a coin toss. Half of our followers thought Arrowette would win, and half of them thought that Mirage would win.
And I thought that was pretty surprising, considering how obscure of a character Arrowette is.
Yeah, but Dani Moonstar was never referred to as Mirage in the New Mutants film, so unless they recognize Mirage from the comics, she probably was also just as obscure.
True, yeah. Well, I have the results right here. The winner of the matchup between Arrowette and Mirage is Arrowette.
Now,
by 54.7% compared to Mirage's 45.3% win rate.
What you're seeing now is just an illusion cast by my greatest fear of Mirage losing this match.
I'm actually surprised as well, but it looks like versatility was really what gave Arrowette the edge here.
Yeah, you didn't get a chance to shoot out too many trick arrows during our speculation, but given just how many different tricks Arrowette has up her sleeve, I could see where you can make the argument that Arrowette would win, even though this was a very close match. 54% is not that high.
Yeah, Arrowette won 547 of the 1,000 matches. So, it looks like matter over mind in this matchup. A real arrow is going to hurt you a lot more than a psychic one.
That's, in terms of physical damage, sure. But think about, the long-term emotional damage.
Okay.
That a fight with Mirage would earn you.
That's what therapy is for. Arrowette has psychiatrists. She'll be fine.
That's right.
But that does it for this duel. Let us know what you thought about the results by writing to us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com or by visiting us on Instagram or Twitter. You can find links to all of our accounts by checking out our show notes or visiting our website, dynamicduel.com.
And on our site, you could also find a link to our Patreon page where we offer ad-free episodes of the show, bonus content, including top 10 episodes and bloopers, monthly live movie watch-alongs, and access to our Discord chat server. Again, check it out right after this episode at patreon.com/dynamicduel, which is linked in our show notes. Our lowest tier is only $2 a month. Again, guys, if you enjoy the show, you want bonus content, and you want to interact with Jonathan and I, join our Patreon.
In our next episode, we will be doing a throwback review of The Amazing Spider-Man with special guests, Media Night with the Boys, formerly known as the Movie Night with the Boys podcast.
Yeah, they also talk about shows and video games, so they changed their name. But John Starosky and Zach Hepburn are producers of this show. They're great guys. Can't wait to get them on the line and talk about what I think is a pretty shitty movie in The Amazing Spider-Man.
I have yet to see it.
Really?
I have to watch it this week for the first time.
Looking forward to how the review will turn out.
But that does it for this episode. We want to give a big thanks to our executive producers, Ken Johnson, John Starosky, Zachary Hepburn, Dustyn Balcom, Miggy Matanguihan, Brandon Estergard, Nathaniel Wagner, Levi Yeaton, Austin Wesolowski, Nick Abanto, and AJ Dunkerly for helping make this podcast possible. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Up, and away.
True believers.